people who are like, there was quite a bit of interest in the eating disorder part, because that's something people sometimes don't talk. Well, if they're actually suffering from it, they won't talk about it because it's embarrassing and all these things. So are there suggestions you have to people who are battling that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I hate how expensive therapy is. It's really upsetting to me how it's just like so not accessible for most people. Like, okay, you're going to charge people $200 a session. Like, what are we talking about here in the US? So I would say if you can get your hands on the DBT workbook, it's better than nothing. It's ideal to have a therapist kind of walk you through it. But if you don't have that, I think the book itself, the handbook itself, is at least somewhat helpful. And then of course, journaling is huge. And I've never heard the word trigger warning thrown around so much as in the eating disorder community, but I think that sensitivity is actually really counterproductive. Like, I don't think that you can just go, oh, I'm not going to hear, oh, somebody's talking about a burrito, I'm not going to listen, and hope to get better. Like, I think you have to hear thoughtful conversations about eating disorders and about people who have had eating disorders, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can't deny that there's some sort of positive reinforcement from having one, or like nobody would have an eating disorder if there wasn't some positive reinforcement to them, right? So you can't just pretend like it's this ugly, big, bad wolf. And then I think that you have to acknowledge the bad as well, so that you really know what your future is going to be like if you continue down the path.
Yeah. There are a lot of speaking of trigger warnings and where you wouldn't necessarily expect them. I had a kid when I was like fairly young nowadays, so 24, and I joined a couple of mothers groups because I was like, I need some mom friends. All my friends are drinking. And there were so many trigger warnings. You couldn't communicate with anyone. Like, you weren't allowed to post anything about renovating. This is what got me. And I was like, okay, I need a different way to find friends. You couldn't post anything about renovating because you needed a trigger warning first. Like, I got in trouble for asking about renovations because it was triggering to people who couldn't afford renovations.
Oh, I was like, my God. At what point? Yeah.
At least with something like an eating disorder, like, a lot of the people who have one are going to be pretty, for lack of a better word, neurotic. Like, a lot of people with any type of health problem are neurotic. So at least with the trigger warnings there, it's like, you know, people could say you're not trying to not trigger a binge or something. So I've got some compassion there, but yeah, you need some sort of exposure therapy, right? Because you're talking about being able to listen to these conversations and things without being worried that it's going to make you sick, right?
That's exactly it. 100%. I think of course there's compassion there for I mean, the nature of eating disorders, they're brutal, but also, yeah, I think if you can't hear conversations about it, there's no hope. You got to face the reality of it, good, bad, and ugly. And also, there's a book called Intuitive Eating that was really helpful.
I've heard about that.
It's really great.
Does that tell you what to eat, or just like, how does that work?
Doesn't go into what at all. It's just about going back to the kind of almost like a child's point of view toward food, where it's like you eat when you're hungry, and you stop when you're full, and you eat, 3 meals a day. Like, your parents aren't going to let you go by not eating a meal. So you gotta make sure that you stay on top of eating 3 times a day. And it sounds so basic saying that kind of overall premise of the book, but it really breaks it down in such a way that's like, oh, you can kind of start to unlearn your patterns and for me, it was like being re-exposed to, oh, this is what like normal eating is. And also this, like, I'm rambling because I care very much about like helping in any way that I can people with eating disorders. I just think there's such a waste of time. I think they take so much potential out of people, and it's like heartbreaking to me that there's all these people out there who could be so much more, but they're just wasting their time on this addiction. It's like defeating that. It's just, it's so bothersome. But not having any food rules, I think, is really important as well. If there's anything you can do, because as soon as you got one rule, oh, I'm just going to do unless you have to for health reasons, of course, or just a conversation to have with your doctor. But for me, it was like, as soon as I had one food rule, then I had 100. And then I was just, oh, well, it's just lettuce. Cool. Great. It's a very slippery slope.